Okay.
Forgot. This is Harbor Town.
Switch off. Legends of Evantris.
Harbor Town is an all-new series from Miniature Building Authority, the leader in tabletop gaming scenery. Unique, flexible, and playable, Harbor Town will take your games to a new destination.
Yeah, I got a ton of Miniature Building Authority up on my table right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a fantastic ad they have.
And here's the crazy thing, Jason. I think I'm the only one that ever utilized it. I don't think they ever used it themselves. So, yeah.
They paid a hell of a lot of money to produce it just for you.
He had a guy, one of his friends actually did it for him. So, but I may go see Kirk and his friends and family in April or May to DM at his warehouse for and do something, and we'll stream that. So he's invited me to do that. He's gonna fly me down to Atlanta.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, you know, with as popular salt marshes, that just screams, in South Harbor Town, that screams salt marsh there.
Oh, definitely.
From the edge of the sea.
I missed my key there, and it came back up. Yep. I think it streams. For me, Salt Marsh is great. Harby is where it's at for us, Definitely. But you can use it for a lot of those places. Will Gary remember tonight? Right?
So is there a specific list of historical things you want to cover, or are we just going to ramble?
I think early, so I want to talk about Invoked devastation. What happened, right? I want to talk about migrations, right? Founding of the Great Kingdom, expansion of the Great Kingdom, and anything that happens in that era. And then I think we'll leave Vecna for Kristoff at some point, right? And then Battle of Meadows, right? Because that's where everyone's campaign usually starts right after that at some point. That 576 era or earlier, I think that's because I just want to hear the stories. I think it's cool.
Right.
Makes sense, guys?
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Good. Awesome. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, bum, bum. Hey, what's up, Adam? Hey, PU Pick Dad. Welcome, both of you. So, Adam, you're not on tonight, right? No game tonight. Hey, Frank, what's going on? Good to see everyone. Glad you guys can make it. This is going to be, you got some people who have a lot more information than I do on these topics, which would be awesome. Because, I know my shortcomings, or at least I claim to. know, though. He probably doesn't want him anyway. After he sees how many fumbles I have with him.
Yeah, you haven't been that lucky.
Oh my God, it was just so brutal last week again. What's that, David?
Your players probably love them then.
Oh yeah, I mean, I lost like 7 rounds in a row, but I'm a glutton for punishment.
Now we know they are sponsored by players. Yeah.
You guys are hand rollers, aren't you? You know, you don't use a cup or a tower.
No. We have such a big table, and you know, it's just. Is that a lopsa? What is that?
She's part Shih Tzu, part Maltese, part Chihuahua.
There you go. Wow, Chihuahua.
Yeah, so she's noisy.
What's this you spy? This is like the greatest Greyhawk ad for a stream ever made. That's what it is, Frank.
Yeah, it's cool.
Wait till everyone hears all the stories on, in synopsis, what everyone's doing on Saturday. Stories are they're fantastic. They're so cool. And that'll be Sunday night. Frank, come on. Definitely. Plus, I get to show away all the goodies I'm going to give away. Oh, cool. That's awesome. There he is. Gary, you want to come on, man? I'm serious.
Yes.
You want to hop on, Gary? You can hop on for this. I'm dead serious.
Yep.
Absolutely. Because we're gonna talk some early history, man. You want to talk Hateful Wars? I'd be all for it. But if you want to do it another time, we can do it another time.
I think you should wait for Tommy.
Yeah, Tommy John Kelly's doing all those stories. I think that's a good idea. We should set a date there, Gary, to do that. Absolutely. Well, Frank, one thing, it's going to flow a lot more smoothly than it did last year. We'll tell you that. Everyone else will tell you that. So.
How many crashes and issues did you have last year? Was it that bad?
Crashed a lot last year, Jay.
Did I crash on the streaming?
Yeah, did you?
No, we're talking about like having the 4-hour gap, remember?
Ah, got you. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we're like, well, what are we gonna do now?
Yep.
So, yeah,
How you filled it.
But I think I was having crashing issues back then until I figured out, I had to really.
Yeah, you tweaked what you
yeah.
ran on the computer and stuff.
But I made it through that night. I have no idea. I don't know if I don't have an answer to that one.
That was a good one, Gary.
Oh, Frank, that's a shame, man. Yeah, you know what? I always clean reboot and put all this stuff on your. Alright, let's just come on. You're absolutely correct. If you need to clean reboot before a stream, another little trick we'll discuss at GaryCon. So good evening, everyone. Well, I'm a little scratchy voiced tonight, but I have plenty of wonderful persons to help out tonight and discuss early history of Greyhawk. So I'm J.K. Lord Gazumba, and our normal co-host Mike, Greyhawk Mike
Howdy.
Bridges, Anna Meyer.
Hey.
And then we have two individuals that gentlemen we had on on our stream on Gabin earlier a couple of weeks ago for bloggers, David Leonard and Jason Zavoda. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on, and we're going to discuss, go around and talk about the what I would say before a campaign starts, all the history that goes up to what you're playing. I mean, I think that's the best way to put it, is real early, and so let's start with our guests. So, David, just in a synopsis, what do you? I know you did a lot of research. What'd you find out that you were surprised about with the early history of Greyhawk?
Oh, well, it's hard to say. There's lots of things, but one of the things I noticed is that there's very early mentions of the Drow War way back at also like minus 5,739 common.
That is awesome.
That's the first time that they're mentioned at all in the Orth Journal 11 in Leonard and Steve's history of the Suloise.
So is that 6,200 years before the campaign? Because common year, you got to add that onto that negative 5,700.
Yes. Well, it's another. Yeah, the common year. No, that's the common year. That's the minus 5,739 common year. Wow. So add another
It's almost 7,000 years ago before the 576. So yeah.
So that was at the dawn of magic. So they've been the elves have been fighting that long, apparently.
So do you think that's when the Corel Larethian Loth battles and all took place at that time?
That happened even way before that.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So in Elven terms, it's only like 10 generations or 12 or so.
Yeah, that's recent history for them, I suppose.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Here's a good question. Did that happen before or after his fight with Grumsh? I'm assuming before, correct?
That's way after because because the Grumsh Corlin fight was in the time of the gods, and that predates the epoch of myth when all the elves and the dwarves and so on, when they began to awaken. Apparently they existed before that.
Okay.
And they were used as they were the foot soldiers of that war.
Wow.
But they didn't come to consciousness until afterwards.
Great information. And you're saying a lot of that referred in Earth Journal 11 with Len's and Steve's, or okay.
Oh, yeah.
Taught me something there I didn't know. Mike, you're looking like, wow. That's early history. How about you, Jason? What do you got?
Well, this is one of the reasons why Dave's Greyhawk Musings is my go-to source for previous history.
Nice.
My take on things is very different because I look at things from an overview of where the lore comes from, and I see that there were three major eras of lore, and that's the Greyhawk, the Gygax era, and then the Sergeant era, and then finally the Mona Hollian era. And those were the three eras where you get the most work on the lore. With Gygax, the setting's designed to be very bare bones for us to flesh out. So all this information is subsequent to what comes from the Gygax's Folio box set and the original modules that were mostly tournaments that were then kind of retrofitted for some into Greyhawk. In between these eras, have these minor eras that came out where after Gygax was kicked out of TSR, there was a anti-Gygax kind of fervor for a while. And really, the only big thing that comes out is the City of Greyhawk box set's the most positive. And then the big game changer was the Greyhawk Wars box set. And then the Sergeant era begins. Now, so much of the information that we have comes from Sergeant's incredible amount of work. and it's very much Sargent, more than other things, where he created the past of Greyhawk out of mostly out of minor references and or whole cloth, just things that he invented. And it was really lucky that we had Sargent was an incredible creative person, and he did so much good work. Now, he had to have been forced into a corner by the Greyhawk Wars and the desire to move the campaign further down the road and to still get things away from some of the original Gygax material. So the big leap we have then is Gygax did not want to detail items, so we wouldn't have had any of this information. And if you look it up in the folio or the box set, it's just a few reference points for the individual DM to just create on their own.
Mm-hmm.
The Sergeant took that up, and he really created the first heavily detailed Greyhawk campaign. It goes against the intent that Gygax had started, but it was where a lot of people wanted things to go. It's unfortunate that he had to make it a much darker place because of where they had sent things after the Greyhawk Wars. Then we have a middle period after Sargent's gone, and there were a number of things non-Sargent that came up as far as modules and such of lesser quality. And then we have this period with the Player's Guide to Greyhawk, and the adventure begins, and a handful of modules. And it was perhaps to kickstart the campaign, but it really doesn't add much more to the lore. So it's kind of a minor era. And then we have the Monahalian era. Now, when we talk about the Earth Journal and the old email list, Grey Talk, and then the website Cannon Fire, then what was going to end up becoming the Living Greyhawk campaign, that was all summed up in a really massive source book called the Living Greyhawk Gazette here. And in that, we get so much of implied and condensed information, and we really get the second big addition to lore. Now, and afterwards, we have a fading off. We have the Living Greyhawk campaign itself. And as we talked about on that last show, it was so, such a huge amount of people involved, and but it varied so much in quality because not everybody was a real big Greyhawker. The lore wasn't quite as important as the gameplay because this was an actual game system going on. So when I look at lore, I go back to the Gygaxian era, and I'm a Gygaxian myself, so that I look at it in really in like just different eras.
Okay.
Like I said, I look at the Gygax, Sargent, and the Monahalian stuff, and my primary thing is to try to keep true to the Gygaxian material, and where I would have taken the campaign. And unfortunately, I'm not a Sargent person. I wouldn't have taken the campaign in the direction he took it, but there's so much material offered there. I wouldn't have taken the campaign in the multiple directions of the Living Greyhawk campaign. But again, there's so much material there, and there is a world to detail here. And it's very nice to be able to go to material and say, this is what happened, this is what was, without having to write every single word for yourself. So I go and I look at like David's Greyhawk Musings, where he's detailed this wonderful history of Earth, and I give it to my players and I say, this is what you think has happened. This is what you've heard. So you've heard about the Growl War, you've heard about that. But what really happens in my campaign is usually something very, very different, because I take it from the individual DM's take. Now, as somebody doing research on this material, I break things into those three major, and then the really 2 or 3 minor points where the lore was developed in detail. So
Cool.
it's very great to be able to go back and look at the Earth Journal and see where material was written for the past. But for me, I take everything, and I love looking and reading everything that's come out about Greyhawk and referencing it so everybody can find that material. And I look at it and say, that is a wonderful story. That is something I want my players to know. But it's not necessarily going to be something that is actually true in my campaign.
Okay.
And what it does is adds depth, but it also creates that kind of Middle Ages business where you have all these tales that may or may not have an ounce of truth to them.
Right. There's no way to verify the truth. Hey, Jason, what Earth journals did you were you editor for? What numbers?
Well, I would have been editor for 12 and 13.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Excellent.
So one thing I find, when you actually look at all this lore, the lore is great, especially for the DM. The DM needs to have a clear picture about where the stories come from, where he wants it to go. But as far as the players are concerned, he should only be leaking it out to them a little bit. The whole world should be a mystery to them. A lot of these people should be, I don't know, farmers' sons or such, or even if they're a lord, they should know a little bit about the region of the principality of blah blah, this tiny little space, and then the rest of the world should be a total mystery to them. And so the richer your history is, the more, I don't know, little snippets of information you can feed them to it's basically lures for the for the fish, right?
Well, and that's a great point, is that your players may not be as invested in the lore as we are, right? Your players may be interested in playing their character and may not want to go into that depth. So, and we have all different varying levels of people who enjoy it or don't, and that's a great point, definitely. Excellent, good kickoff here. So, Mike, what do you think? What for you? What comes to mind as far as like an early history tidbit that's like, wow, that's cool?
So an early
something
tidbit. So you mean like besides the Baklunish Suloise Wars?
Yeah, if you wanted to go on there and talk about that real quick for a tidbit, yeah, we can.
I don't know if that's going to be a real quick tidbit.
All right, well then we'll save that.
Yeah.
I have
a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I have a question. How does everybody really see the Suloise Empire? Like personally, the way I look at it was the Suloise Empire was very Mesopotamian. Because that's how old it really was. We're talking about, like it's over 5,000 years old, right? So you have to find a suitable culture in our society that would have been, the beginning of it, and that's where you're going to get the Sumerians and so on. So that's where I saw the Suloise, and I saw them sort of like as a city-state republics until finally they went on an expedition up into to find what was out there in the world, until they found the barrier peaks, and we all know what's hidden up in the barrier peaks, because they took a leap. They went from just learning how to use magic, and then they just steamrolled over everyone. That's my theory about where the Suloise Empire came from. Then later on, you have the Iridians. Now, in my opinion, I don't see them as being magic users. Like they weren't great wizards. I think that they stole what they could from the Suloise when they escaped their slavery, because they only had 400 years to go from their escape to actually having the machine of Luco and so on. So I think that they stole bits and pieces of the technology that the Suloise found, and then they developed it, and that's why the Suloise steamrolled over everyone, and then the Orids steamrolled over the Flan afterwards.
Interesting.
Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Go, Mike.
Okay, well, you kind of jogged my memory now. So, as to steamrolling, so Flan, I think, were probably at one time, maybe not collectively as strong as the Suloise Empire, but were definitely on par magically and, in development as them, but kind of for various reasons collapsed on their own, and here and there. They also had to contend with the Elven kingdoms. Anyhow, that's why I guess my point is, by the time the migrations start, then where's the flan? But as to the Orids, I don't know how I feel about them. Their history to me seems kind of nebulous still. Before the migrations.
Well, why don't you tail in what you were going to discuss with the Baklunish and see if that links in it at some point? I know you have a lot of depth on it, right?
So I was going back through an old Cannon Fire thread that I had started, and it kind of really blew my mind because I had wrote this thing like 13 years ago. And I was just kind of reading over the same old, World of Greyhawk book that we all have read, from the box set. And I was reading about the Baklunish Suloise War, and then I realized the Baklunish won that war. They were winning the war, rather, I should say. And the part that was really grabbed me was in the writing. It says, concerning the migrations, it said that the Sul peoples, mainly fleeing from the Great Wars in the Suloise Empire, moved. And I thought to myself, the war was in the Suloise Empire? So that to me meant that the Baklunish were on the offensive. However it started, I don't know, but it got to the point where the Baklunish were just about to overtake the Suloise Empire. And that's when perhaps the Sul started to get the hell out of there. They were following basically in the tracks of the Orids, who had started migrating sooner. And I think that the Invoked devastation was kind of like their last ditch effort to save the Empire.
Their nukes, so to speak.
Yeah, and
concept.
They didn't account on the Baklunish having some payback.
So, go ahead, Anna. You have a comment?
No, I was going to say I think I agree with you. I think that's a really interesting and good, well-founded interpretation of it.
And so I did a lot of research into that. I might try to put that up on my blog and all that information, but I'm damn positive that the Baklunish were winning this war. For whatever matters.
You agree, David?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Like they, in the years of conquest and prosperity, the Sul took them. Well, they steamrolled over everybody. They were enslaving the Flan, the Orid, the Kersi, as well to the south. Then the Flan freed, but then there apparently there was during the War of 70 Nights. That's when the Baklunish freed themselves, stole one of the binders, and then they got another one from them later on. And so from that point on, after the war began, they said that 9,000 Bakluni were slaughtered to begin with. Then the Sul went into their lands, and I think they ran out of steam, just like say the Nazis did. After Lightning War, and that's when the Bakluni started to push back and continued to push. And I think Mike has it right. They were over the Selhots back into the Sul, and that's when the Suloise were starting to retreat and run away. I think that the devastation was a last ditch attempt to stop them.
In there somewhere, they started employing the humanoids. So I take that as they were running out of manpower. Maybe also because people were fleeing, so they needed recruits to keep.
The humanoid stuff was one of the reasons the Orids began their migration.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
But even before this, the Suloise, they attacked and fought the elves and almost won. So It was kind of even before then. They got the elves routed from the mountains next to them from what became what was back then the crystal mist, and then became the hell furnaces and stuff. So
here's my
That was
question.
a double-edged sword, though. I think that was a double-edged sword. They banded together with the Drow to destroy the Grey Elves, and and it says in the Orth Journal 11 that the army that they sent was destroyed to the man.
Yeah.
So when you say that there were a Mesopotamian-style republic, David, are we saying that the empire was a neutrally based or evilly based?
It started off just being neutral, and then
like Rome kind of intentions, and then slavery ensued, kind of deal.
Yeah.
Similar.
Well,
Okay.
they got mad at the elves, right? Because the elves were teaching them magic, and then after some disaster, the elves closed all the magic schools and left, and that's when the
okay.
That's
really
when they
Okay. So that's interesting.
But also, I think that the Suloise Empire, the geography was probably different, because when you look at the Sea of Dust, that's just like a dust bowl surrounded by mountains in every direction. So my theory was that originally that was not the case. There were rivers and stuff flowing from the Sulhot south through the land, so it was probably some high plateau. So you had a nice temperate climate up there with forests and wonderful climate. And then after the devastation, then the mountains, the hell furnaces, or the crystal mist turned into the hell furnaces. You got volcanoes, you got and that became a dust bowl. So the whole area kind of shifted geographically in the devastations.
Did all the invoked devastation and rainy colors fire create the volcanoes?
I think so. Yeah.
Yes, and it's noted that the dwarven kingdoms were destroyed at that time because of the changeover in the crystal.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
I think that's LGG quotation.
Yeah. Yep. So my guess is that there were extensive changes, and now it's just a dry dust bowl that used to have rivers and stuff. So that also leaves, where's the drainage water coming from the Sulhot? Maybe I just guess that it just floats down into the dust and down somewhere in the deep holes of Earth, so to speak, somewhere.
Gygax might even mention some things about the dead rivers in the Sea of Death. I'm not quite sure if I remember.
I think that, and I still assume simply that is still a high plateau, because it's so far south that it should be tropical or desert, at least if we're normal, so to speak, lowland terrain. So it's probably still a high plateau surrounded by mountains, and then it becomes really dry. So yeah.
In this era, I mean, see, we're talking about a point in time in the Greyhawk campaign when magic was at such a level that they were, besides doing things like the invoked devastation and rain of colorless fire, they were raising mountains and raising volcanoes, collapsing mountains. So the entire terrain of that area, I mean, it's absolutely destroyed, both for the Sul and the invoked devastation. So much of what was the Baklunish Empire is destroyed.
Yep.
And, there are supposedly bits of land, hidden towns and stuff from the past within the dry steppes, but otherwise, it's an unimaginable amount of destruction that's left over. Now, for me, I love all the things that I'm hearing. For me, Gygax was very big on taking things from the real world and converting them into things similar in Greyhawk. So I always like to find something equivalent to our world history. One of the things is, for me, instead of like Mesopotamian, I use the Roman Imperial, the Roman Republic Imperial, and finally the Byzantine era for the Sul, where their last period is this Byzantine imperial, where they were this greatly feared, the way the Byzantine Emperor was, and then at the very end, finally, they were destroyed, and they were finally brought down. But they had this terrible thing, the Greek fire, they called it, and so I think that maybe Gygax might have been thinking along that lines. And then when we look at the Flan, I see the Celts. So while I see a powerful empire, I see one in my campaign where I link it to a heavily druidic empire and a very Celtic, and they were not like big monumental city builders out of stone. There were a lot of things that were very perishable constructions by the Flan. And then the Orids I see as the Germans coming in, pushing the Celts out of their way, the Celts lining up for battle with the Sul, joining forces to stop the Celts, the Sul using the Flan, and then the ones that are allied with them get run over by the Sul, and just a big mess when the final destruction comes and these Sul are all cut off from their basic civilization.
Yeah, it's very much like Europe back in the age of migration. What is it, like 400 to 800 or something BC? When you had the original, yeah, you had the original Scythes, the Celts, and the Basques, and a whole bunch of other people. Well, it was before then. It was the Indo-Europeans who came from that's what we are called the Caucasian, because it was the from Central Asia, West Central Asia, Indo-European people. They came in, and then they became the German and the Latins and all the ones we know today. So I see a lot of parallels in the story of the Flannies from Europe that way.
Here's a quick question. PU Pickup Dad asked it. Is technology static even way back then? Like, is it Iron Age and it just stayed Iron Age because they have the weapons with steel? What do you think, David, on that?
Yeah, I think the Flannesque cultures are pretty much stuck in the Iron Age, but like I said, they still have access to this, alien technology. Not to throw too many science fiction tropes into it, but let's also remember though that I don't think they had an opportunity to evolve, because the greater age of magic was back during that early Sul, Baklun, Bland era, and that ended with Vecna. I don't think that that Mordenkainen or any of the, or Bigby or any of them could actually stand up against those original warrior wizard priests, because that's what they called them. Because even Vecna and Caraptus and so, like, all these guys were shown and mentioned that they had great swords. Plus, they worshipped great gods. The Sul were all about the Tharizdun and such, right? And so they were wizards, they were priests, they were warriors, and no one comes anywhere near them. Nowadays, we're living in a post-apocalyptic world almost.
Yeah, to some degree, yeah.
Gary just said that there's a canon reference that calls the Age of Vecna a Bronze Age.
Yeah, I remember reading that.
Interesting,
somewhere.
but.
Yeah.
You still have swords. I mean, Bronze Age is spears, right? And it's not gladiuses,
No, but they had bronze swords and stuff like that back in the
Bronze armor,
Age
bronze swords, yeah.
Not the Romans though. That was they.
Well, if you jump back, if you look at Sea of Death, the Gord gets to the city out of mind, which is this ruined city of the capital of the Sul Imperium. And the ruins of it are under earth. And he is going down this area where he's trying to find what they call the Theopart, which is part of the lock that locks up Tharizdun. Now, the ancient Sul called it the Cone of the Magi, and it was supposedly one of their great sources of power. And while Gord is down there are all these like museum pieces that are sealed in some kind of glass-like thing they call rheostat or something. And anyway, he smashes one to get a sword. And this ancient Sul warrior jumps out and fights him. And they note that his armor and sword, while different, is equal or even better than the wonderful armor and weapons that Gord possesses. So the ancient Sul, again, we're looking at a world that's very much like ours, where we had the Roman imperial era, and when it fell, there was a dark age. And after that dark age, there were bits and pieces here and there, and then civilization finally picked up. And at the point of Greyhawk, where it is now, we're starting to enter like a pre-Renaissance era in the Flannes. So we're regaining things that they had in the past, but still, you have to think here. Here you have these leftover monuments and towns and bridges and roads that have lasted for hundreds and hundreds of years in the real world. And the people there are looking at them thinking, they can't do that today. So when you're looking at the Sul Imperium, what you're looking at is an age of magic, maybe magic technology like David's talking about. And Gygax was definitely talking about heavy, Tharizdun type magic that the Sul were wielding, but a very greater age of power than exists in the Flanaess today. And so that gives these artifacts that you can find adventuring, and it just is a very stirring idea that the past was somehow reached a higher point than, and that things are trying to get back to that point again.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We have an enigma in the north, though, too. We have Blackmoor.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like Lendor Isle, right? It's like that's where Dave Arneson's game went, and Lendor Isle's what Lennikovsky's game went on Gary's map, right? Isn't that kind of what happened there?
Well,
I think they kind of hinted at it too, because they have that point where it says that no one really knows where the city of the gods is, and that's up there. Same thing with the egg of Kut, which is supposed to be some sort of like automaton or something, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think that Blackmoor that we see on the Greyhawk map, and it's included in the Greyhawk literature, is only like an homage to the Dave Arneson's campaign, because it's I've seen the maps and some of the description of Dave Arneson's campaign, and they are vastly different. There's that's a whole game world, not just like one little corner. So I think it's more like an homage to it.
But you can work on it, like Jason's
definitely
done some beautiful work on it, and like with just enough in there that really titillates the imagination.
Definitely.
And then we're talking about Lendor Isles and reading up about the Invoked devastation. One of the things is the population of the Lendor Isles comes from the migrations and the fleeing from the Invoked devastation and the reign of colorless fire.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that was it's great information, and David, still we didn't answer your original question, which is the ironic thing out of all that in-depth discussion, right?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's just there's so much that you can speculate on, and you can decide for your own, the history on it. And I really appreciate you guys talking about this, because, like I said, this is foreign to me, because we never talked about this in our campaign over 40 years. How about you, Anna?
So another thing I find really interesting is how some of the really great mythic spots within the Flanaess are from the Flan, the Flan. Apparently, like, the Ghost Tower of Inverness and White Plume Mountain and so on. It's like Tostenka, up in the mountains, potentially even those hanging glaciers in the Korisks and such. Those, I think that's all residual from their civilization. I think that that war between the Flan and the Elves was so devastating that it destroyed most of what was there of the Flan civilization, and it's just dust. And that's the reason why they were, maybe such an easy thing to mull over when the Orids arrived.
Excellent.
When the Orids arrived, they thought the Flan were nomads.
Well, they had become nomads.
All their great civilizations were gone by the time the Orids rolled in. Right. They probably wouldn't have known different.
Yeah.
Well, what's his name? The one who created the wizard who created Castle Greyhawk. He went up north and he found Verolos, and so he came back with a bag of tricks. And so maybe that's the reason why he was one of the greatest magicians, the greatest wizards of his time.
Zagging.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm typing a lot here. So, Hot shot kung fu. Yes. Well, thanks for asking those questions. I'm trying to help him out. He was like, we all know we spent a whole show on Gavin a while back on Fantasy Grounds, which is awesome. Oh my God, Chuck, you're going crazy. When the battle ended between the Suloise and the Baklunish, so the Baklunish the Baklunish migrate to the north, or were they already Ekbir's life already exist?
They already existed.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so they already existed. So did Ket exist at that time? Because Ket's like a border. I'm just
Yeah.
asking for my own personal, like which
Yeah, I mean, Ket was a province of Zeif, I think.
Okay. Okay.
See, Zeif. I mean, if you look at the locations of all this, the South just got hammered. I mean, all of the central lands of the Sul Imperium are destroyed, and then the Baklunish, the entire Baklunish South, these vast lands, they are now just they're obliterated. They're these wastelands, and Zeif is only a small portion of how big that area was. Now, Zeif, which I don't see much about, was it's mentioned as being an important naval part of the Baklunish Empire. Ekber was simply a fishing village, and I mean places like Tuzmit, Ol Zeif, all these places they were the like outlying provinces, and really so much of what was the Baklunish Empire has been laid to waste. I mean, I think the area is several times the size of the the Sea of Dust.
Oh yeah, it's definitely almost 3 times the size if you include the western part that is not part of the Darlene map or mine map. But if you look at it, it's 3. Yeah, it's it's probably half the size of the Flanese, the what used to be the Baklunish area empire, maybe even more, because you have the western coast that goes way up. The western part goes way north too, so it's a huge area. The Baklunish Empire was probably bigger than the Suloise, at least geographically, maybe not population-wise or might, but if it has that huge basin, there are some really tall mountains further west, so to speak. That seems to have been the kind of the barrier, the spine of the world, the tallest mountains on Earth, probably taller than the Crystal Mist or the Yattles. And east of them and were the Baklunish.
Was
Well, you can decide it's as big as it is. You know, you could decide that that the steppes is only as big as the Sea of Dust, because they mentioned all about in the early histories that there were Western tribes, unnamed tribes that the Sul had enslaved. So you know the Baklunish could be there as well, and also just alive and well. You know, it's your campaign, right?
But one of the interesting thing is also that the Orids seems to come from part of that area that is described to be part of the Baklunish area, as like where the plains, the Paynims and the dry steppes are. That's where Orids. If you look at the migration map, the arrow comes from that area for the Oridians. So they come from that area. So there's even if the areas are vast, there's a lot of people that migrate out of the same area. So we need to try but it might be that they didn't migrate at the same time and they enslaved each other and all that stuff. So it's a bit hazy on which one lived where, so to speak, who lived where. So I simply assume that the Baklunish, if you look at the migration map, there is like an arrow at the northern coast, like they come from even further west, and the Oridians came from the area around the dry steppes and the plains of the Paynims and stuff. But that's just if you look at that map superficially, they might all come from further west originally and then move east. So yeah, it's all kind of hazy because the map is so overview that an inch on that map is 3,000 miles or something like that, 2,000 miles. So it's kind of very, very overview.
I'm going to express an opinion, and also that's probably going to be really unpopular, but honestly, I really hate the far west of the Auric, you know, like the entire supercontinent, because I just think it's just way too big. And aside from that, you know, like how I know they say weather is magically created in North, but how do you get a warm current?
Yeah, on a continent that big. Yeah.
Like if you look at that big map, the ocean that's the Dramage Ocean is actually just the size of Hudson Bay. It's not big enough, and it's landlocked on all sides. There's no way that warm water could get up there.
It depends on it's much bigger than Hudson Bay. It is several thousand miles wide, but it's not from east to west. It's huge, and whether it's surrounded by lands on three sides, that's also debatable, because there is like some sources say that there is like a land bridge north to south, and some maps and sources seems to say no. But on the other hand, everything is hazy. But I agree with you that it's huge, but I cannot like it. I don't like the description of the countries and stuff in the West. I don't like that one bit, because those countries are bigger than the Flannies, most of them, way bigger, and it's kind of ridiculous how large they are. But I kind of like the idea of having the large continent, because there is room for huge badlands and deserts and these kind of epic landscapes that could be really fantastic. So you can have your dragon empire, you can have a whole bunch of stuff in it. So I like the basic geography and the possibilities of it. What I don't like is the human centered empires that popped up all over in various descriptions, like Europe and Nippon and all that stuff. That I don't like that
just
at
filler.
all. Exactly. For me, I would never do that. But I love the layout of the continents and stuff, because it gives a huge enormous possibility for all sorts of epic locations in en masse, so to speak.
I hate it. I've written about this before, but I think it's restrictive.
Yeah.
Adding on another 2/3 the size of the Flanneus, more Orc on top of Eastern Orc.
Yeah.
You have, East Orc, East Central Orc, Central Orc.
Yeah.
It just keeps going on and on and on. And the problem I have with it is that means the only contact that the Baklunish and Sul have is by land. It is virtually impossible for there to be Baklunish Sul sea trade. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
They will not trade with each other.
But before that map came out, it was very possible.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been much more realistic to develop this whole ancient history if it was a smaller continent.
Yeah, I'm sure that whoever wrote the history didn't do the map, because the map and the lot of the writings and stuff don't seem to match, and also they don't seem to have done any research on scale and what's possible that way and stuff. So yeah.
That's okay. Soapbox is good, man. Right?
Yeah, we put ourselves on soapboxes.
Mike and I were talking about how much we hate the Scarlet Brotherhood taking over the Sea Princes last week. So and we all have that in the great. But that's a great thing, is you can make it your own, right? And I don't ever want to go over on that side of the map ever in my life. So it's just.
What about the eastern side? Do you ever think you will go over to the Great Kingdom side?
I'll wait. Well, maybe.
Maybe okay. Maybe Iron Gate could be cool.
Yeah, I've been to Iron Gate like twice in 40 years.
Oh wow, you've been there.
Once.
That's
Oddwall once. Tim did an adventure in Oddwall once. It's just like. But
cool.
I'll go to Firelands if Carlos ever releases his Firelands version. I'll do that. So here and there. All right. So migration wise, we cover the Invoked devastation enough. You think that was pretty good?
Yep.
I think so.
Awesome. David, whenever you. By the way, I know. Whenever you have to depart, it's okay, man. Understood. I love that you're hanging in there.
Me too.
So, migrations. Who wants to start it off?
No. those are tricky. Those are really
just in general. Like, I want to know: did they stop off the Sul and Iridians, form Keeland, then 200 years later, the Great Kingdom was founded? Like what? Like you know what I mean? Keeland's the first kingdom, correct?
I think so.
It's the oldest. I think
No.
It's the oldest. No.
No, that would be the Elven kingdoms. They have
Exactly. They've been around.
I'm sorry, human. I meant human.
Migrating.
Yeah, I always feel sorry for the poor elves who have to
poor
be
elves.
shoved
Yeah.
away.
You want to handle it? You want to tackle it, David, a little bit?
Yeah, David,
the
please.
Flan were the first. Remember the Flan heck that had Haradara.
Yes.
That was the first great city. So the Flan were the first ones to come across. The Flan met with the elves. The elves liked the Flan better than they liked the Sul. They taught them. Of course, that didn't work out well. But you know, then came the Sul, and then came the Orids, right?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah. Or the Orids came
Orids
first,
and then
and fled from the Sul, and then the Sul came after they had the fights with the Baklunish.
Couple decades later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that kind of explains why the Sul weren't successful in most of their northern expansion, and that their one northern expansion is you know, according to the game, is more of you know, that the
barbarians.
Oh, the barbarians. They are pushed all the way to the very far inhospitable north.
Exactly. They had to flee for whatever wasn't settled.
Pushed to literally the corners.
Yeah.
You have these powerful Sul that are somehow being driven away by these Orid migrations and not able to, you know, like really there, if you look at the migration table, the Sul go south or they mix, except for the one branch that goes very far north and is cut off.
Yeah, but they are the ones that stay pure, so to speak, more pure than the others. The ones that
because
north.
they're locked into that one area.
We could postulate that the best of the Sul were destroyed in the war before they fled.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I mean, that's what I think the map really shows, that they would be refugees rather than a like an army pushing their way out into expansion. I think that the game kind of calls toward the Sul migrations being like a refugees, whereas the Orids are a you know, a complete nation moving forward in full strength.
Okay.
And they were also vicious to each other, the Suloise, during the migration. Slerutin, in his tunnel, he took one big clan of the Suloise and locked them in one of the antagonists, the internals. He locked a whole part of their population in the tunnel to perish in there. So they were kind of, they just fought a civil war earlier too. So they were kind of nasty at each other too, internally as well.
So just the passage of Slerutin, I know, Jason, you've done a lot of depth on that, correct? You've done adventuring in that area with
Well, yeah, but you know, a lot of my adventuring I stole from Jacques.
Okay.
I love the caverns of Thracia, and
oh yeah, that's exactly where I placed them too. Yeah, absolutely.
I used it for Slerutin's Passage, and then I'm a big Gygaxian, so Sea of Death and the Sea of Ash, and you know, the pygmy albino Sul. That's all part of my thing. And then when Anna talks about the, you know, tribes being trapped into Slerutin's, for me, they're part of the groups that ends up becoming the pygmy albino
that's
Sul.
That's a great point. Yep.
So Gary Julian just put down, there are 3 kinds of Sul migrants: pre-imperial exiles 1, war refugees 2, an elite group of houses that left with Slerutin 3.
Yep.
Very interesting. What do you think about that, David and Mike? What do you think?
Could be. I have a question though. There's a UK module that has a tunnel, a magical tunnel between, was it Styric? And the Sea of Death. And also, could that be Slerutin's tunnel?
According to the notes, Slerutin's tunnel is supposed to be south
Yeomanry.
of that. Yeah, down in Yeomanry. Yeah, way south of it. So, yep.
I can't remember which one that was. Was
Because
that when a star falls?
Styric is further north, so Styric is towards Ull and the place on the Paynims. So yeah.
Anna has it clearly on her map. I'm not switching because I don't want a disaster tonight. You know, so
I tried to put the Slerutin's tunnel. I made it, but try to put it down there, and it's also described in the Living Greyhawk modules that depicts the town of Darkgate. So that is near the entry of the northern entry of the Slerutin's tunnel. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm still reading. I've barely scratched into the modules. I've bought them. You know, they're all nicely bagged and boarded and.
Yeah, but you've done fantastic job digging through all the the stuff so far. It's fantastic. Yep.
Mike, you were going to say something? You had that look.
Oh no, whatever Gary put about the Sewell migrants is not incompatible with anything I think we've said.
It's kind of synopsized in the glossography, isn't it? A little bit. The original glossography here,
Yeah.
right?
I think the fact is that they did not have a head start. I think a lot of theirs was probably reactionary
Okay.
to things going downhill because, like I said, the Baklunish were winning.
Okay. But all right, so the Baklunish never migrate anywhere, really, correct? They just go to Ket, and that's it. That area.
They move north. They move
Yeah.
north.
North. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Sublime.
And the kind of northern fringes of the Baklunish Empire kind of survived most of the devastations, and that's why we have the Sif and Tusmit and Ekbir becoming the Baklunish and Ket becoming the Baklunish heartlands nowadays.
What's up, Brian?
And the tiger nomads, aren't they Baklunish stock?
One of them's
So
Flan,
that's
isn't it?
I'm not sure.
Wave of migration.
Yeah, I thought they were. I always depicted them as some sort of Baklunish Flan kind of merge up there, so to speak, or something.
The tigers are more Bakluni, and
There
then
you go. There's your migration
I think the wolves are the mix, and then you have the rovers, which are pure flan.
Ah, there you go. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There it is in the original. I should have put that on the scroller.
Oh yeah,
My bad.
that's the migration.
Right. Original
Yeah,
glossography.
Like Gary's mentioning here that not big on the Amera Flan up there for the rovers. And like in my campaign, they're Cossacks based on.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Makes sense when you get closer to the to where the where the Stonefist is, because we can all kind of get the idea that they must be somewhat Russian, right?
Definitely. So I have them. I have my rovers as Georgian. So
well, if you look at this, you can see it's a turnaround arrow on that map. See it? Look at that arrow up there where the rovers are for the Baklunish. That's a turnaround, right? Yeah. So it's like they got repelled on that map. So,
I look at the Flaness and I kind of see like a reverse European map, where the crystal mists are kind of like the Great Ural Mountains. And then as, like if you think about the size of Europe compared to the size of Asia, then you kind of see that huge continent that they're talking about, that's the landmass west of the Flaness. To me, that's Gygax looking at Asia and seeing, something like what's modern Russia, which is like 3 times the landmass of the United States, and modern China, which is like 2 times the landmass. And, then you look at Europe and you realize how small some of the European countries are. I think, what is France about the landmass of Texas?
I think it's smaller. Yeah, it's close. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the Flaness is really meant, and I mean, it is a fantasy European country.
Okay. Neat.
Yeah, I can clearly see all these references. I try to downplay it. I don't try to play my campaigns as that people are the equivalent culturally of real people. I try to stay away from all that and just try to invent fantasy ways. They're cultures that are maybe some loose, but very, very loosely. But I can understand that's where they come from. But now I think I have so many fantasy references to kind of things that I've seen before. So I try to really downplay that in my own campaigns. But I agree that that's where it comes from. Yeah.
I do the exact opposite, and I steal from anything historical I can get my hands on that fit my ideas, and then I love taking things from popular movies and fiction, so that like if I do something about the Baklunish, I'm stealing from say some Sinbad movie rather than trying to because I'm looking for adventure and excitement, and when I'm doing a dry history, it's I recently did a history of the kings of Ekbar. So I just went online and looked at the history of the Persian kings from, the early times through the Caliphate. And there's a wonderful thing on Wikipedia that had them all listed. and I just applied their timeline and just offshoots of their names and the horrendous things that happened to them. Because
Yeah,
like
that's
every
great.
second king has been killed or overthrown by his brother or his son or his cousin, or you have these various leaders who go from like this, here's the one king's son, and then the other son overthrows him, then the third son overthrows him, then the son of the other person's son overthrows him. And it's this the history is it's so beautiful for an adventure game.
Yeah, I agree with that part, that you take inspiration from certain happenings and you can steal ideas and stuff, but I don't want to smear one culture, one earthly culture on one particular fantasy culture. That's and Gary has a good point in chat too, that yeah, it's kind of I try to stay away from it from political reasons or racist reasons or whatever. So and I want to be free from the real world, but I certainly want to take inspiration of happenings in the real world and then simply apply them where I see them fit at the moment in my campaign.
It's all cool.
Here's a migration. Here's a migration that I think we're kind of missing.
Oh,
there is the original. Remember, there was the Kelsey people, because the Sul met them. So, maybe this is better for Mike because he spent so much time in the sea with the sea princes in that area, the Amodio Desert. It's like, so the people who are in the Oman Islands, and Hepmonoland, is apparently there's this continent Anakiri that is not Hepmonoland. I originally thought that might actually be Hepmonoland, but it's like, the people that were there, are they the ones who went to Hepmonoland, to the Ulman, and also then to the Emadio, and then finally met up with the Sul? Is that a possibility?
What?
Sure. I don't really use that Orth Journal timeline too often.
Okay.
I've mostly hewed to the officially published sources on that, and which there's very little.
Just this.
So I'm not saying it contradicts; it enhances, but I don't have much comment on that Kersey stuff. They might be the Tuovs, for all I know, who are in the southern Hetmonland.
Yep.
Do you use them in your Did you use them in your campaign?
In my campaigns, in the Amodio factor in a lot, yes. And in some of the South Seas stuff I've done, it's all mostly been Oman Empire ancient history. So I haven't really gone farther than that. The unnamed continents and whatever, I've seen them named alternative things through the community. Kersey, Anna Kersey, or whatever.
Is that where the Isle of the Ape is? I've never actually cracked that.
I don't know if that has a location.
I think that's extraplanar, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just that's a bizarre one. I know we talked about it last week on the show.
Seems familiar to me, being extraplanar.
Yeah, demiplane. Yeah.
There is an island in the Relmore Bay that is called Stormwater, and also Monkey Island. Is that the same one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah. I was just curious because there was mapped on some maps. That's why I put that name on it. So now I'm curious if I screwed up or not.
No, I think that's correct, but I think it's a separate island than Isle of the Ape.
Okay.
Good point on that. All right. How about this? We'll finish up migrations with this. Pick one thing that was severely changed. Not Great Kingdom, not Keeland, but a country or a jungle or a forest that the migrations affected and what you like about it. So, David, what do you got?
I'm thinking that there was an enormous, the Ardy Forest. I think that connected all the way up with the Fost Forest and all the way up, all the way up the mountain chain. And I think that the successive humans just cut it all down.
We were talking about that last week too, as well. And their top 10 forests and how they interconnected and stuff. So you're thinking the Iridians mostly came in and they utilized all that forest and cut it all down. Put the Great Kingdom's capitals right in between them, right?
Yep.
So
I think they used that to fuel their empire.
Nice.
I think there's lots of evidence pointing in that direction. Yep.
Excellent. How about you, Jason?
Well, for me, it's the city of Greyhawk itself. I mean, The city wouldn't exist without the multicultural migrations just changing everything. You know, we look nearby and we definitely have signs of Flan civilization, an ancient one, and then maybe even a pre-ancient one, and then we have the Oridian influence coming, the Sul. It's just I really liked how they had the development worked out for City of Greyhawk. Now, I'm not a big box set fan. I know, Jay, you really love the City of Greyhawk.
I think it's the best.
Set.
I think it's the best publication ever.
I think it's the best thing that they ever came out with in that era.
Yeah.
You know, because it's the time between it's the time between Gygax's vision and Sargent's.
Yep.
And there was a lot of anti-Gygax material coming out.
It says by Carl Sargent on this. Quality. Yeah, Carl Sargent did the box set.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, it says by Carl Sargent and Rick Rose.
Well, no wonder.
And the Gem of the Pharaohs is done by Douglas Niles. The Folk Feuds and Factions is Carl Sargent and Rick Rose. So, I mean,
yeah,
it's cool.
But for me, if you're talking about like one of the it has to be better. If we're not talking about things like the Great Kingdom and the changes there, and if we want to look at something where all the people of the Flanness kind of join together, that really ends up being, you know, the trade center and development. And honestly, for me, the Greyhawk that I use is much bigger and much more. I use a giant-sized fantasy city. Now, Gygax wrote a book called City of Hawks, and he did a really rough sketch map of Greyhawk, which is different from the box sets version. And it is
much better, in my opinion, too.
Vast city. It's huge.
Okay.
I think the walls encompass something like 27 square miles.
Yep.
Interesting. Gary taught me something that I didn't know about that too. In an earlier show was the Wild Coast is called that, and Greyhawk is also like a frontier town because the Great Kingdom and Keelan met there. Right? I didn't know that. That's how the Wild Coast got its name, because you had these two kingdoms coming in either direction, and that's why it was the Wild Coast, because it was like open territory between them. Neat idea. So I didn't. Hey, you get educated all the time, and that's why I love these shows, because I learn so much. So what do you think, Mike? What do you got?
So refresh my memory here. The question is, what about the migrations?
Something that was affected by the migrations, not Great Kingdom or Keelan, but
by the migrations.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of like that. Like I was kind of hinting at earlier, the Flanness was Flan largely. That a lot of what the playground we're actually on is the Flan bones and their ruins and whatnot. So when the Orid set up the Great Kingdom spanning across the whole thing, it's built right over the top of Flan civilizations. Alyssa was a Flan civilization.
Okay, I did not know that.
I like the Great Kingdom. I really like the Great Kingdom in that, and someone did a really good map on the different eras of the Great Kingdom, and then as they fritter away, it gets smaller and smaller. So I guess what I'm saying is I like that you finally get to see a progression of a kingdom being built and then falling apart again without it all just being taken away in a flash like the Invoked devastation.
Good one. Really good. Okay, Anna, how about you?
I have one of my favorite. I'm an Elven fan, so to speak. So elves play a little bit bigger role in my Greyhawk than others. But I have the what used to be one of the Elven kingdoms as well, Elven realms, from going up from the Vesve all the way down to the Selene, and it's kind of interesting to see that in my campaign, that's why Veluna was formed separately from Furundi, because it was part of a more Elven influence, and it gradually became its own realm, and also that elves influence, that's why that became such a good aligned realm with the priest of Rao and the whole bit, because that was a huge Elven influence. And it was also a secret pact with the elves that they could move through that area, and that's also because High Folk was different from that the Elven realm of the Taranal, that is part of the Kershani, that is part of the Vesvi up in the mountains, and High Folk was part of the Great Kingdom, and that was kind of a secession or an agreement, a pact between the Great Kingdom, or the secession of the elves to accept humans to go through up to Perrinland and stuff through the High Folk Valley, and that's why we have High Folk, and that was kind of a realm that was kind of run by half elvens and elves on behalf of the Great Kingdom, and it was kind of the elves said, okay, the Great Kingdom is so powerful that we have to give them some bits and keep the rest, so to speak. And Valuna was part of that early times when elves and humans could kind of negotiate terms
Nice.
and set it. So that's why. And Selene and Taranal became the two permanent realms that stayed elven forever, so to speak, and always been since. And Valuna is kind of in between with some elven, and so is Vermobonk is also part of that kind of, that have a little bit of elven influence back in the day, or from the old days. So that's part of some of the legacies that the migrations brought with them, that I tried to incorporate in my campaign.
Anyone have any other further comments on migrations, or do we cover a fair amount of that? I mean, we just scratched the surface, obviously.
Yeah, but I
that's
think
okay.
we've done quite a bit of elves and of migrations and stuff.
And do you have information about the Lendor Isle elves and the migration?
Not much more than what Len told us a little bit about the stuff, and also that what he didn't like was that they took over, the elves took over the Lendor Isles in the Living Greyhawk, and kind of took it all away from the inhabitants that came from the Great Kingdom. So I know he didn't like that bit that much. So yeah.
So going to the biggest kingdom of all, the Great Kingdom, and once again, I am devoid of any East Side map. Gary says the Battle of a Fortnight's Length was the one that doubled the size of the Great Kingdom almost overnight, right? Because of what happened with the battle with the Soul. How many years after that did it stay intact? Does anyone have that data, or like before it started falling apart?
That's easily referenced in the main book.
Okay, it's right in the main book. Okay.
Yeah.
Because like when was the glory age of the Great Kingdom? Like when was it like at its peak?
I think from
200?
200 CY?
Exactly. I think from the Greyhawk, from like year 1 to about 200.
Pre-Age of Great Sorrow, correct? So we're looking at 1 to 200. Okay. All right.
So about split when Furiandi broke away, right? Furiandi and Van Valuna, when they broke away.
Yes.
And then it took another 200 years, at least before Nyrond.
Yeah, that's why I remember loosely. Yeah.
And it was Nyrond that pretty much broke their back. I think that was the beginning of the end. Right?
Yeah. Well, what years did the Great Kingdom control Perrinland?
Up until the time that Furiandi broke away.
Oh, that's true. It was part of Ferron, and then yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So up to 400.
Principality. They were the Quaeglands, part of the Principality of the
Viceroyalty of Ferron. Yeah.
So we're looking at glory years 1 to 200. Decline up to 356 when Nyrond's established. Disaster turmoil between crowns 437.
Yeah, that's when the Ivids took over, I think.
So it has a lot less era of power than the Roman Empire did. A lot less in 8 years.
Well, not that much less. The Roman Empire was like 500 years maybe, or something like that.
The Roman Empire was strong from like 100 BC to about maybe you're right. It's close. 350,
so it's not that different.
400 or 500 years. But okay. Yeah.
So roughly
the Western
in the same
Roman.
ballpark.
Okay.
Yeah. Roughly in the same ballpark. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was intentional.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Gary was, very big on history, and there's just so many real Earth history in our Flyness. It's just so handy to have something you can change, but just fall back on and see something that has a real sensible structure to it. And sometimes when you do fantasy, it just you do something and then all of a sudden you realize, you've got a giant hole in your thinking. But when you look back on history, you can say, well, no matter what I was thinking, this really happened. So this structure is a real structure that was not something where you were going to say, well, that couldn't have happened, because you can say that did. So if we look at the Great Kingdom and its history, I don't know. I just assume that somebody with knowledge of real world history would dig into that and use it.
Okay. Anyone want to bring up a comment or two about the Great Kingdom beyond that?
It probably took the Oridians a few 300 or 400 years to get to the point where they had the Kingdom of Arity and all that, and then maybe that's why it seemed like they burnt out fast. So I think maybe from migration to dissolving, maybe the Iridians had a pretty good run.
So Casey just asked a question, and I need to smoke something before I answer that. Does anyone want to read that and then and then answer that question? Holy schmolies, man!
Okay, what I find it also with the Great Kingdom was, when I was reading about it, it said that it had this golden age of goodness before it descended into evil. And everything that I read about the Great Kingdom was they were just an evil empire, like every empire. They expanded until they weighed too much, and then they collapsed on themselves. I think they were evil from the beginning. They were fierce. They held and then they just went into.
Yeah, if there was a good part of it, it was probably the Nyrond.
Yeah,
okay.
That was probably the only good. That in Almond, no, not Almond. What's the Almor?
Almor, yeah, but I don't.
I thought the Night Protectors were a good organization.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't really agree with that view, because I see them as originally, they probably were good knights. They were Hieronymus Pillar and stuff like that. They have the sun dial on the shield, like the pillar symbol, and Hieronymus and Exo. So I saw them original, and also you have to realize they were expensive, but also who did they fight? There might be that the other guys were even more evil and more bigger bastards than the Great Kingdom.
I bet they were a good knighthood.
Yeah, so I see originally, and then they kind of declined and became they had like the Roman Empire and many empires. They lost their ways and they became power rather than principles, so to speak. So and then the Hextorians came and took over more of it, and then eventually you had Ivid, and he did the pacts with the devils or whoever he had a pact with, and the empire fell into complete disarray and evilness. But that's just my take on it. So I can, you can definitely, I think David has a good point. They were the ones that conquered and slaughtered and conquered even more. So if you were outside of it, I can totally get that you see them as evil. Yeah.
And Gary's saying that they fought the Earthland, which were evil.
Ah, okay. There you have it. Yeah.
Okay.
Part of it. Yeah.
Anna,
that doesn't mean that they were good, though.
Yeah.
No.
True.
Do you have an idea of the land mass of the Great Kingdom? How many like square miles it was?
Well, it was when it at its peak, it probably had at least way over half of the Flanese. So and I forgot. I think I did some.
They claimed probably more than they could defend.
Yes, yeah. When they were up in the close to Duntradoon in Blackmoor and had the Quakelands and were up against the Stonefists and stuff like that, then they were in trouble, so to speak. They were starting to butt heads with the Sheldamar, with the Keellanders and Sheldamar Empire and stuff. Then they probably stretched themselves even for a fantasy world.
Well, that's also hard. It's also hard to justify how the Great Kingdom envelops Elven kingdoms.
Yes, yeah.
And how's that? And How does that
But
work? out?
I also see them not only as a political military empire and machine, but also as a cultural influence. And I see them very big that way. They were the first kind of, I would say, modern nation that modified. A lot of the old religions like the Flan, Druidism, and Old Faith got replaced with new gods and new ideas and new principles and stuff. So I see them very much as a cultural force too, that kind of changed the Flannies on that note too, and probably trade and commerce and a whole bunch of stuff like that. They built roads, the Diravane, or however you pronounce it, they did for communications and stuff. That was very different.
Yeah, and last week on Anna's map, she was going over roads that were way in disuse because of the Great Kingdom pulling back and all the, running up through that area of what's that, north of the Shieldlands.
Yeah, exactly. The borderland of the Shieldlands were once the border of and you have. Yeah, but you also have the bandit kingdoms that were not really proper part of Great Kingdom. That's why they never got civilized. It had the political.
Culturally, they probably were.
Yeah. So it's a bit like Europe when you have Germany and the Scandinavian countries who were not part of the Roman Empire, and they are culturally different from the rest of Europe to this day because
language.
Because Augustus ruled that was going to be the end of the borders of the empire. Mm-hmm. So instead of pushing into the lands that the Germans held and far into the north or anything, he just said enough's enough, because they just weren't getting anything. It was like, what are they going to get? Just more people. They weren't going to conquer cities and civilizations. Yeah. So there wasn't really anything of value to them to be had. They'd taken over the world as far as they knew it, as far as they could reach. Now, if you look at the Great Kingdom, what they're doing is they're taking over everything of value within the Flaness, and that's their expansion, and they didn't have a limit. And I would say, when you look at the elves, I wouldn't say that instead of them, if you look again toward Rome had a very structured thing about allies and what level you were at as an ally, what rights you had as an ally. And I just assume the Great Kingdom's probably rolling along, and any nuts that they couldn't crack, any civilizations they couldn't take over, I would assume what they would do is just go around and subsume within themselves. And even if they didn't rule in that area, they ruled everything around it.
Yep. That's what I did with the High Folk and the way I saw it, how they handled the elves in the West, so to speak. They kind of isolated them into enclaves up in the Vestfy and Selene and tolerated them in the betweens because they didn't want to have more. They tried to minimize trouble and conflict, so to speak, and move on and conquer other lands.
All right, I'm going to take this moment to say goodnight because I'm going to bed now.
Thank you so much, David. It was
David,
awesome
thanks, man. Thank you for hanging in there for so long. I really appreciate it, and we're definitely going to have you back in the near future. It's a blast.
Thanks for I actually had an idea for a project for you, David.
Ooh.
If you're interested in migrations, ? Do some research and chart the humanoid migrations.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have a good night, Dave.
Night, Dave.
See you soon. All right. Good night. All righty. So, perfect timing there. And good. That was excellent. I'm glad he hung in there as long as he could. So, I want to get to this topic just because I've been looking forward to this for a long time on history, and that is Mike's expertise area, and that's the Battle of
Time for me to go.
The battle, yes. I want to talk about something specific.
Yep.
Very specific. I want to hear about the Battle of Emarid Meadows. Okay. And Jason, if you got something to chime in on, let me know.
Thank you, Jason.
And let's rock and roll with this, and let's talk about it from beginning to end as much as we can in our time we have available. Go ahead.
Oh, fun. So let's see. Emarid Meadows is 569. Like Jay said, it's like really close to your baseline starting date of 576. It's supposed to be like a seminal event that maybe sets the stage militarily, politically, or something. Locally for the central Greyhawk themes. For me, it was in my research for this, I did an article on it. You can probably see it on Cannon Fire. When I found out, first thing that was interesting was, and this is in the box set narrative for the battle, which Gary went to a lot of detail on, amazingly. And I wish he had done more battles like that, by the way.
Yeah, that's why I loved it as a kid. It was like, wow.
But yeah, Emarid Meadows was not fought on the Battle of Emarid Meadows.
Okay, like Bunker Hill.
You're right.
Okay.
It says that day one, the armies of good went up there to kind of check things out. They saw a huge horde of evil coming up from the south, so they backed off, did some skirmish fighting, backed off to a more favorable position. So day one, Battle of Emarid Meadows started there, but didn't finish there.
Okay.
Anyhow, to backtrack real quick, the principal players in this is Thrommel the Fourth, Furiandi, and Valuna come to the aid of the mayor of Verbobank, who has this really big evil that popped up in his backyard, the Temple of Elemental Evil. I don't know if they really realized what was going on in there, just that evil people were being attracted to this location. You had the little town of Nulb, pool of evil, and just they were attracting humanoids and ogres and evil bandits and
pirates too. I mean, water pirates too. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is in
So
the TE book. Yeah.
So it was like a magnet for all these bad guys, and it was getting to the point where the Viscounty just probably wouldn't have been able to defeat them. It's not a very big place.
Okay.
So they're very closely tied to Valuna, and then Valuna also is closely tied to Furiandi, all that political ties. I hypothesized that the prince took this as like a holy quest or something. Maybe he got together a force of his own to send down there. It wasn't like the full might of Furiandi, the full might of Valuna. I think he just didn't really realize what he was going up against here. Oh, bandits. Okay, let's go. Along the way, though, then they start picking up dwarves, gnomes, elves, because they're more local to the problem. Gary says, "Am I doing an account of all the battles?" Oh,
you're doing a synopsis of.
This is a synopsis of all published sources on this battle. I don't know about other battles, Gary. That's for another day.
But it's a synopsis of you putting together everything, and then your synopsis, your ideas of what happened. Okay, cool.
And then taking the best educated guesses on some of the other stuff.
Nice.
All right, so this is all kind of boiling. This conflict's boiling up. Interestingly, the Hateful Wars.
Yep.
I think. Let's see. That happened in 510. So like 50 or 60 years prior was the Hateful Wars. And that drove all these evil stuff out of the Lort Mills, right?
Right, and some of them okay.
Go. They all went to the Pomage, the Gnarly, the Sus. And, the Temple of Elemental Evil might have been a new case, a new cult popped up. But I think it's not coincidental that a lot of the forces that rallied to this temple are remnants of the Hateful Wars.
Okay.
How much earlier, or what's the time difference between the Hateful Wars and the battle
50 or 60 years.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So this is really Hateful Wars Part 2, maybe.
Yeah.
Or the last battle of the Hateful Wars, you could probably argue.
Yeah.
Now, so they got this big force build up. Thromel's coming in to save the day. He gets some elves and dwarves that join the cause who are more closer to the action. And it says in Gary's writing in the box set that they are outnumbered 3-1.
Yeah.
So, Thrommel had the whole might of Furiandi. If he knew what he was going up against, he would have brought a bigger army. And that's why I really fussed and have fought with myself over what the exact numbers are in this battle that he doesn't really say. like, oh, the bad guys had 5,000 and the good guys had, 2,000 or 10,000 or whatever. I don't have any definitive numbers. All I know is that the horde is supposedly 3 times the number, and that's even with all the other people that come in. And so you get this vibe. As a young kid, I always felt this was like the Battle of 5 Armies.
Exactly.
From The Hobbit.
Exactly.
Yeah. So all, everyone's rallied together, all the different races, and to defeat this evil once and for all. So on day 2, they fall back to the river, which is the Velvet Diver River, and that's when they've already got a plan. Well, the bad guys are not as organized, and they're just pretty much just charging, as Gary describes, straight ahead, but they're protected by the river on one flank.
The swinging door.
Yeah, they let them through, and then the elves, I think, were in hiding. They came in from the side, and they just swung around, trapped them in the bow of the river, nowhere to go, and then just kind of slaughtered them. So superior numbers, just
yes. Yeah. So the synopsis is that they had light cavalry, pikemen, right? Gnomes, dwarves with elven archers, and the humanoids are orcs, gnolls, and ogres. And they don't really talk about the humans running the armies at all on the humanoid side. You're assuming
educated guess on that. Yeah,
priests of the Temple of Elemental Evil for the most part is your guess, or?
Well, I think the
fighters?
moat house was around by then, obviously. So there had to have been some kind of, the fortress of the Temple of Elemental Evil. I highly doubt that stuff was, the cult built that. Then the cult had armies that they intended to put in there, and I'm sure those were human ran.
Okay.
And that's one of my questions. Who built the moat house? Was that the cult, or was that part of the defense of Hamlet, or the Verbobank or something?
I think it was built by Verbobank, if I recall, wasn't it?
That seems to me seems to me the plausible, because that's an obvious place to put one of your outside borderline defenses, so to speak.
So in 569, they sack. It says it fell in a fortnight. The temple. Well, they didn't do a good job, obviously, right? Because the temple still they didn't raise it to the ground.
Oh yeah, but they sealed it. They couldn't.
Yeah, right. They sealed it off. They imprisoned Zugdemoy, if I said that right. But it didn't take long in most people's games. That's what everyone's excited about, running Hamlet and then the temple eventually, right? That's everyone's point. So I just always, when I was a kid, I got drawn right to it. And our first characters ever, because you want to put yourself right in the middle of history, all our characters fought in the Battle of Emarid Meadows at 18 years old.
All right.
Yeah, that's how my campaign started.
I've never done that.
Yes.
Amazingly.
And we didn't have any clue what we were doing, but that's how the campaign. That's how we started back in 1979.
Very cool.
Were Byrne and Rufus at the battle?
Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
Yes. Otis was too.
Certain was there.
Yeah.
Certain was there. So. Otis. Anything that's a return Guntaka, I don't care about Return to the Temple of Elemental Evil. I got that when I found that they turned Thrommel into a vampire somehow. I was like, that's it. No, it's done. Yeah. It's done. So I don't even want to know what return. It's kind of like no. That's another here. It's so much a no. I'm going to even bring out a no, just no face for that. So Jason, you got any input on that?
I mean, the battle is such a open. I mean, as Gygax did do some detail on it, but it's so open. It's so it's just touched on, and it's such a main thing. Sorry about that. I myself have run it as where characters in my campaign went back in time and fought in the battle.
Nice.
So it's just. I don't have the detail that Mike has on it. I've done things with it, but I've never done anything too specific. But it is one of the most evocative things that is in the old lore, and it's it's just an amazing thing with the whole Verbonic area is to have all these incredibly classic adventures and bits of history right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've always found it neat that you have this climatic battle that happens, and then the adventure starts. Usually a battle like that would be climax.
No, that you're exactly right, because it really draws you in. When you read this glossography, it drew me right in. I was like, wow, that's cool.
Also, back in 4th edition, the digital dungeon magazine era, Chris Perkins did an adventure based on the Battle of Emarid Meadows. If it's still available online, I don't know. But Dungeon 221 has an adventure called
cool.
Emarid Meadows.
Dungeon number 221. I'll take a look at that.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And is it at that time? Is it back in 569?
I assume Perkins back then, before he got really big into his 5th edition stuff,
cool.
he was doing a lot of articles.
Yeah. Was it Dungeon 221?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, cool.
I'll check that out, definitely. So, Mike, what do you wean from that? I mean, it's a great piece of storytelling that Gary did in the glossography, and it sounds like he kept mostly to what he writes in here, with not some.
Yeah, besides not having numbers to work with, which is weird because all the rest of that book, it just talks about troop strengths and things.
That's true.
He doesn't give any there.
All right, let's go on and ask this question, because I know there's so many bizarre theories. Who kidnapped Thrommel and put him in?
The obvious question. Yeah.
All right, I always say it's agents from the temple, because why would the frickin' whoever, the Scarlet Brotherhood, even be around? I know I've heard all these sorts of weird stuff.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, that's.
I agree. I totally agree. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't do some of this stuff, but the elemental evil cult. Yeah, that's where I have Thrommel getting
payback.
Yeah, me too. Yep.
PU Pickup Dad says the Moat House is a Temple of Elemental Evil outpost, and it says it right in Hamlet on page 12. Thank you so very much for that, man.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. So I was just curious if anyone had come up with it's simple retribution, and that's it. It's not some bizarre cult thing.
Yeah. They Thrommel is personally responsible for putting down the cult, so whoever's left of the cult wanted to break up that marriage, which would have made Freyani and Valona stronger.
All right.
And I even have a follow-up in my campaign. I haven't played in it much, but we came to that area. Thrommel was just part of it, but he didn't take part in the adventure. But anyway, I have his maximum security prison as at Gibbering Gate up in the Barrens in my campaign. So he hides away special prisoners and things he doesn't like. He hides up there in some sort of, it's kind of an extra dimensional location, so it's much bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. Cool. And so I'll see if I can write down, and I have some sketches and stuff
that I never thought of doing.
Yeah, so I turned that into his hidden prison where he put stuff he didn't want, and that's where I put Prince Thrommel was in there.
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's and I had some characters going up there for some other rescue mission, and then if they were lucky, they could have rescued him too, or his remains at least. And because I didn't know, I had to roll to see if he was alive. I didn't know that when we started, so we'll see. But that was my take on it. So yeah, so I took him and put him in his maximum security prison up in the Gibbering Gate.
For me, it was simple. 1987. We're doing 86 through 87. We're doing Temple of Elemental Evil, and they freed him. And he's it's a main part of where, if you want to talk about deviating from the canon, and then he marries Jolene. I think it was like in terms of, I gotta find out the year when it, but he was
that unite Valuna and Faruna?
I did. I was thinking of doing it, then I said no. It was past that time that the uniting would happen, so they're still separate. But he is actually he happens to come up in my campaign a lot because Walt had a character who was actually a dark elf that actually was part of that group, who became real good friends with him, and she actually was actually leading some of his cavalry troops up in Furiandi, and it's bizarre what happens in campaigns. But he was freed in mine, and I was like, that's why when that return came out and they made him a vampire, I just was like, this is ridiculous. You know what I mean? Because you're undoing a possibility. You put him there to free him in the Temple of Elemental Evil. That's just the way I looked at it, and that's what happened. And it was cool. And that happened in '87, man. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, that's the problem when you do these campaign settings that grow over the years and change over the years. They can be real campaign wreckers. In my campaign, we freed Thrommel, and I'm very big on Verbabank, and he ends up marrying he's going to marry the daughter of the Viscount.
Right.
Causing all kind. No, it's not Jolene, not the Valuna woman, not Jolene.
Oh.
He's marrying the daughter of the Viscount of Verbabank.
Oh,
cool. Did that cause a political scandal then?
Yes, Valuna and Ferrandi are practically at arms against each other. And it's a big rift. And then she was going to be the heir to the Viscount, but now she's going to be the wife of Thrommel and the heir to what is it? He's Furiandi, isn't he, or is he Valuna?
He's Furiandi.
Yep.
All right. So anyway, the next person, there's a bunch of people in line for the Viscounty, and it turns out that there's a elemental evil cult in in Verbabank, and one of the women that's in line for the Viscounty is part of that thing and part of that cult, and that's part of my big Verbabank campaign.
Cool.
But it's all linked to that Temple of Elemental Evil, Verbabank, and the Battle of Emarid Meadows. It's one of the richest areas for me. I end up getting kind of locale trapped, and I haven't explored some areas of the Flyness, like the Great Kingdom, but I've gone into great detail in several of them, and that's one of them right there.
We loved, and I've gone back to this multiple times, we loved Selene because we had so many players. Back in 1E, multi-class was where it was, so we had a lot of half-elven Selene characters, and we had a lot of humans. They all were wild Coastians, and they were all, peasants, or they were, they came from low standing, right? And that was perfect for us to get them involved right off the bat. Hey, we're going to fight as foot soldiers in this. We're pikemen and the Battle of Emarid Meadows. It just made sense, and it was cool. It's so this story is what links me to Greyhawk more than anything is that battle. That's the number one thing that really linked me into I love Greyhawk. So, yeah.
So in chat, Mindcrime says Living Greyhawk Furiandi raised Thrommel and made him the Black Knight going against Belvoir.
Okay, well, it's
that's kind of an interesting take.
Sure, I mean, it's a different game, and it's different campaigns, and you just do it. It's stuff happens, man. Stuff happens. But remember, it probably had to have him resurrected, because you can't raise someone. It's 1 day per level. That's it, right? They probably had to resurrect them, not raise them.
Yeah, I was thinking about IUs could make him into some sort of undead thing, like some Death Knight or something. But then they probably But they probably have to turn him into some powerful animated skeleton or something.
Right.
If it was dead. So yeah, because I guess a Death Knight can only come from free will. I'm not sure.
Oh, that's a good question. So
yeah.
See, now all of this isn't just a moot point. It's just all the early history, all the past history, besides adding color and connections to the contemporary material. It's also, why don't we start looking about going back in time in the campaign? Because you open up a vast, vast world of adventure. I know that in my blog, I write little snippets of ideas, mostly centered around some picture I found. And recently I've started doing various historical things, like the original Alyssa, the Queen, her history, the first vampire in Greyhawk, doing various historical stuff, because I want to take adventures into the past. Besides adding, adding color and substance to my Greyhawk campaign, I also want to use this material.
Yeah. it's you can go so many different directions, and if I thought, for example, that Gary was doing a campaign during the Hateful Wars. Now I think he mentioned it last week. Well, that's cool. I mean, that is like, because you have you could build from whatever. There's a lot of stories you can do. It's kind of like doing Middle Earth and do role playing in the Second Age before Numenor and all that. Because it gets wiped, so you have so many different things you can do. So it's exciting that that's another reason why I think Anna was smart making the 576 map and going back to that as the base map now, because
Well, yeah, it will be the base map. Yeah.
that opens up all the early stuff where it's fresh, even the
Well,
shieldlands.
well, I mean, if we go back to the box set and the folio, the intent for the design was for us to take that as our Rosetta Stone, and from that point we could all discuss and say, all right, I started here, and this is where I go. Like I started with this box set, and here's all the stuff I had to add, I had to detail, I had to change because it's just not there. Now, that's not up for everybody. It's not something every DM can do. So we get more and more detailed material coming out of fan material and from published material. And that does complicate things. I mean, not just in contradictions, just in level of detail. Like that Greyhawk box set, it's just on its own. It's a huge box set with a lot of material. And then you have all of the stuff that came out from Sargent. As Gary talked about, Holliam just mentioned like the Moor era, which I skipped. But there's a lot of detail there too. It tends to be Slavers and Scarlet Brotherhood, but there's these levels of detail, and it builds up to the point really where it does become a world size amount of complexity. So it's nice sometimes to go back to 576 and just say, all right, this is where we started.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. That box set and the maps gave me so much information on how to run wars that I had done the Greyhawk Wars on my own several times over before the actual Greyhawk Wars came out.
Wow.
And then when I'm reading this box set, it either validated some of the stuff I had done or took it in a wildly different direction. Some of it I hate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's and I've said this multiple times that is the from the ashes is the what the hell do I do with this question, right? Because I've been playing. What did it come out? 93, 90? No, later. That 93 is the original Pre-City. 98, whatever it came out. I'm already 18 years into my campaign, right? So you got to decide. I had to decide what happened, what didn't, when it happened, who lived, who died, and it was just. And I know I don't want to get on this discussion tonight on new content or when they're going to release DM's Guild or when is when's Greyhawk going to come out, because that goes down that rabbit hole. Let's not go down that tonight. But you had to. That's why the base starting point is just so cool, because then you can pull this in. You don't have to worry about it. So
Jason was talking about the Sargent and Mona Holian eras, but where we were very lucky was those guys did do their homework and did justify their changes. They could have totally ignored everything that came before it, and we would have so many contradictions. We wouldn't be here today.
Yeah,
talking. But
oh yeah, I mean, if you look at the immediate releases of material that came out after Gygax left, there was horrendous material, and there was low quality stuff that had Greyhawk thrown on it that just was nothing, and not even well written, because there was an animus there against Gygax, and they did do things out of just like vindictiveness. That's why when you got something like that City of Greyhawk box set, that was something just that shone out, and of course that I think Gary was saying that led to Sargent being sole creator on the new, From the Ashes set. I think if you were somebody starting with it and you didn't have the time to be, a heavily involved world creator that you needed to be for the folio in the 83 set, then you get something like Sargent's putting out, and it's like, wow, wow, here are the details, here's the quality work. And it is something that I think a lot of people who weren't in on the early Greyhawk, to them, Sargent is probably more Greyhawk than Gygax.
Right, because Gygax wanted
Yeah.
to stay nebulous. I understand. Yeah, yeah. As far as details go.
But yeah, and also I think that what constitute a fantasy setting when it comes to commercially, when they thought would could sell as a product, was something that evolved with Greyhawk. When they published the original thing, it was kind of the first product of its kind, and no one really knew if it's going to sell, if it's going to be a big thing. And after, apparently sold fairly well, and it became kind of mainstay in the RPG community, in D&D community. Then I realized from a commercial standpoint, I saw that, oh, settings is something we can make money out of, and that became a product line in itself that was probably not intended originally, or no one knew. So it kind of commercially changed, and now we got into the big Forgotten Realms. Then first they had the area when they had a whole bunch of different settings, and then they kind of specialized in Forgotten Realms, and tons of products came out for it for years and years.
Well, I mean, Gygax, he made Greyhawk. He didn't really think anybody would want to do a published setting, and he was even surprised people wanted published modules.
Mm-hmm.
So when he did that setting, he specifically said, well, look, this is your setting. It's like, I've done it. The folio, the box set really doesn't do much of expansion on the folio. And, in 83, this comes out, and I think that's all he thought about it. I think that was like, well, this is it, and you take it from here. And then, after Gygax, or I'm not sure when Forgotten Realms came out. It's post Gygax, isn't it?
Yes.
No, I fucking Forgotten Realms was late 80s.
Well, that would be.
Yeah, I think in late 80s. Yeah, if I remember correctly.
The company itself, I think they wanted a setting. They realized Gygax had kind of given away Greyhawk. They had a lot of, there were a lot of issues, and I think they thought, well, look, we want something like Greyhawk, but we'll own it, and we're going to really hammer it. And then, with the success of the Forgotten Realms, it was straight on to setting after setting.
Yeah.
So what that leaves us with is a very, very nebulous starting point, which is all we have. And then we have the various eras of development. But because Sargent followed what Gygax had written, he took the box set and the Greyhawk Wars and a little changes over what he did with the city, and he developed the setting. This was Sargent's campaign, and then more to a lesser extent, and then we have the details. Because if you look at what Eric Lona and Gary Hollian and I'm sorry, there were two more men in the development of it. I offhand don't have their names, but what they did with Living Greyhawk is they set up a base for a tremendous amount of knowledge about the setting, and then go into what they're going to do with opening it to a living campaign. And that had to be a monstrous reference work that they needed there.
Jason,
for the Living Greyhawk.
Yeah, just a quick comment. It was Sean K. Reynolds and Fredrik Weining are the other two guys that are listed on the cover.
Cool. What a great discussion tonight. What do you think? I mean, this is our first one on history, and we could do so many more, and I think we will.
We should have one just on Great Kingdom.
We should, yes, we should have one just on.
Oh yeah.
We should have just one on the Greyhawk Wars. I know it's not a favorite topic, but
but we need to tackle it one day or
absolutely.
Yep.
So we're expanding out in a lot of different discussions, and we touched on some really early things. Most of the stuff we discussed today is you setting up your campaign for the most part, And I definitely would like to have Gary, if he'll come on one day, and Tommy John Kelly come on and do some Hateful Wars discussion in depth. That would be awesome too. I think that would be really cool. I know I mentioned it in my last Earth Journal article, because it played a role in my Selenian Sysforce Night Watch group. So there's all different, just those little one-liners in that lithography, that's all you needed to get running on it, So why don't we discuss, because it's we got about 10 minutes, and
Okay.
why don't we discuss what we got going on the next couple weeks, all thinking about what's coming up in a week and a half. So I'm excited about that. So Jason, what do you got going on, man?
Well, I had a bunch of stuff that I've been working on. I've been sick for the last week, so
I'm sorry.
my production's gone down to nil. But I just got some stuff out, and hopefully, where my mind is turning, I have an active 5e Ghosts of Saltmarsh campaign. Part of what I'm doing is learning 5e, and the other part is just the 6 people I'm running have never run Greyhawk before, and the big thing is getting them to know that area. And then I have 2 of the Goodman Games 5e books, the Isle of Dread, and I've never actually run that, but it seems perfect for a way for them to segue from Saltmarsh, take a boat, and end up on the Isle of Dread. Or else, if they go landward, I have the Goodman 5e Keep on the Borderlands, which I toss in with Jolly Blackthorn's Little Keep on the Borderlands. I consider one of the best expansions for Keep on the Borderlands I ever saw.
Nice.
But that's just local stuff, and that's just gaming. It's not necessarily what I'm writing for blogging. For blogging, I want to do these articles on the Drow that I've started, and then I've got work I want to do on the Baklunish areas, because in my campaign I've never really touched on them, and I want to do more, and maybe have a Baklunish campaign down in the future. I've worked a lot on doing stuff with Blackmore and the Land of Black Ice. I've worked a lot on the Ice, Snow, and Frost Barbarians for my campaign style. And then the other thing that's really hit me is Goodman came out with a thing on Fritz Lieber's Lockmar.
Lockmar,
and that is so Greyhawk for me. And the way they've done it is to come up these tables that instead of trying to describe the city, street by street, they have a series of tables for encounters and shops. And I just want to expand on that big time, because Greyhawk is one of the richest environments for adventuring, in a Greyhawk campaign. So that's kind of the directions I'm looking at right now.
Beautiful, and I always appreciate you coming on, Jason.
Yeah.
PU Pickup Dad is asking, do you have any way a link or where Little Keep on the Borderlands can be had? Is that
well? I mean, the 5e one, that's just Goodman Games.
That's the Little Keep on the Borderlands. You said the expansion.
Oh no, the Little Keep on the Borderlands.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know if it's still in print or not. That would be the Knights of the Dinner Table, Kenzer and Co.
There you go.
Kenzer Co.
P.O. Kenzer and Company. Yeah, you may be able to still get that on eBay or something like that if it's out of print. So, okay, cool. Amazon as well. Dorgrim says, hey, Dorgrim, good to see you.
I have everything. Hey, Dorgrim.
Nice. So, Mike, what's going on?
Well, I'm limping towards the finish of my 5e Ghost of Saltmarsh campaign.
Cool.
Gaming on Sundays has just been really hard this winter.
Well, the Super Bowl was last week. How could you do it?
Yeah, that too. But no, it's like today we had this really bad snow, and then like just a couple days ago it was 60 degrees.
Oh.
It's really weird. So I never know if I'm going to game any given week. On my other game night, though, I have a campaign where I'm running with 2 of my friends that I'm been kind of writing as I go. And in this one, they're about to have a encounter in the city of Lukish, and they're going to be meeting up with Qualish, and the Seer's going to be there, and one of the characters is Black Razor. All kinds of crazy things going to happen.
Nice.
Yeah. Anywho, besides that, I'm going to keep writing on the blog. I don't know what my next article is going to be about. Usually that's kind of like a game day decision. And I'm also currently working on an Orth Journal article for March that's going to be Sea Princes centric. It's going to be about what Jay was talking to at the beginning of the show. I'm going to write about the unconquered hold of the Sea Princes.
I will immediately use it.
There's no way I will fight anyone who thinks the Scholar Brotherhood can take over the Sea Princes.
I agree 100%. So you and I are 100% lockstep on that one. So I can't wait to read that. So great. Fantastic. Okay, Anna. Oh, and you'll be at GaryCon. Correct?
Yes.
Mike, you will be at GaryCon with us. Cannot wait for that as well. Anna.
Yeah, I'm since I've done got the 576 map, that was a huge thing to get out the door, and now I have the basic versions, the PDF and the JPEG, and it's in the online easy zoom version of the map. So now I'm working on the river map, but I've been kind of squirreling away on future things, because now I've been staring at this damn Flannies map for over 10 years, for 20 years, and the revamped version for like 3 years since I redid the terrain and stuff. So now I realize now I need to move on, and not move away from Greyhawk, but actually to move on in mapping wise. So we'll show off some really cool things at GaryCon. So that will be the era beyond the map that I've done now, because it's done using 20-year-old technology. So I need to move on. So I've been setting up and done some tech demos of what the map in the future will look like, the next generation maps will look like, and that it's really cool. The possibilities are way better than I'm moving into real map making technology, geographical information systems, and 3D technology, and a whole bunch of stuff. So I've done some tech demos, and there will be some cool things. So I'm currently writing a blog post for my patrons at first, so they will get a sneak peek before the GaryCon on how that will look like. And then I have a couple of other projects that are related to future Greyhawk projects that I'm not going to talk about even to my patrons before GaryCon, because I want to have some oohs and ahs at my seminar, so that my patrons will get that posted just after the seminar, and I also need to work on the handout for the seminar, and I'm going to print some other cool stuff too. I hope that I can get that done for GaryCon. So there will be a whole bunch of some new goodies, some tech demos, and because I have some hours, I need to babble about my map making. So there will be some stuff, and it's also time to move ahead in the map making area. I've been staring at this damn map for so long, and it has so many limitations from how it's done technically. So I need to move away from these limitations. So it can be printed, it can be used in many more different ways.
Hey, Wiley.
Wiley, good timing.
Good timing, man.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Re-upping. Hopefully you got your Wiley won a subscriber giveaway just recently, so hopefully you got that. And things are. So
those are and I'm also gearing up for my 2 different Greyhawk campaigns that I will have this year. One for be D&D in the Castle in England, and one for be with a bunch of friends online. And I'm also see if I can run a game locally here too. We'll see. Yep.
Lots of stuff. I know Jason's excited about that because you already invited him, right?
Yeah.
He's playing in that one, so that'd be awesome. All right, so I can't think about GaryCon yet, even though I should, until next Saturday. I got to worry about next Saturday first. So this is what's going on Lord Gazumba channel for the next week and a half. Bear with me, please. Tomorrow night we have our adventure. This will run 2 weeks, and this one is part 3 of our mega campaign, where our high-level group, the Legion, they're going up to a place Anna loves on the map on the Shieldlands, Walrus Crossing, which I streamed about 1.5 years ago. It was one of the first big streams we did when we were on. And this is like 1 year later in game time, too. So we're going to see what's going on there, why they've been asked to go up there. You're going to meet, I can guarantee, 2 names from canon. I'll give you one of them. And she should be dead in all their worlds, but not in mine. Valderessa Sharn will be in the tomorrow night. All right, so that's one of them I'll give away. They'll be meeting her and talking to her. She's one of the 3 oligarchs of the Shieldlands, how we have that set up. So that's tomorrow night. That'll run 2 weeks. Now, Sunday night's a big Gabbin night. Okay, I am looking forward to this. And why isn't it popping up? There we go. Boom. Saturday night, we did this last year, and this is so much bigger this year. It's Sunday night, 7:30. It's our prelude show for the Mega Stream 24-hour event, which happens the Saturday after. I have all 5 DMs going to be on. So Carlos Lysing will be on. Jimmy Duffy from Prater's Rejects will be on. Frank and Ann from at least one of them, probably Frank, maybe Ann, will be on from Nightheart Gaming. Will from Return of the Bandit Kingdoms, Wicked Studios will be on, and I'll be on. Also, Mike Disney, who did some art for us, who painted a figure for this event. It's beautiful. He'll be on. I may have some sponsors on. It's going to be a great show. Anna will be on. Casey's coming on. Talk about their part in my game. Jason may be on. Jason's playing in Carlos's game. It starts at 4 a.m., guys, so it's early, but this is all for charity. Please, if you can, if you can't, we understand, but if you can, please, a few bucks. We can do it via cheer. You can do it via donate. You can do it via guest subs or $250. Count as $250 each. So whatever. We raised $1,000 last year. I'd love to see us double that this year. And there's the preview for that. So look forward to that coming up. But the show, the Gabbin show, we're going to talk, all the DMs, where do you hear these ideas? They're brilliant. And it's all in Greyhawk, guys. You're going to have adventures in Greyhawk City. You're going to have adventures in the Yatils. The finale will be in my custom city, Altamira, right in the county of Ulick. It's going to be great. I cannot wait for all the really neat stuff. And Frank says they've linked in from story number 3, 4, and 5 are all linked right in. So, and okay, so Casey's going to be doing this. He'll announce this Sunday as well. He's going to donate all his Bandit Kingdom book sales from that day to charity, and he will match that as well, up to $100. I'm already going to buy one. He's bringing me one of his hardbacks. I'm going to pay. I'm going to buy it. I want it. So, yeah. But we will have these great giveaway items for the top 12 donators. We got stratagem mats. I got dragons from Reaper. I got paint sets from Reaper. All this great stuff. Cannot wait to discuss that. So what's going on in Legends and Lore? So next Wednesday, we'll have a show still before that. And this is what we got. Ta-da! I'm going to show the next 2 shows. Living Greyhawk, another look. Woo!
Yep.
We will have 2 to 3 people on that were not on the first show with Living Greyhawk and give them a shot at it. Okay. So, I'm looking forward to, yes, DM, if you buy that book, please, man, just wait till, or do it now and count it for the giveaway, because anything we'll take it all, man. We're trying to get as much money as possible for a great cause, St. Jude. We'll have them on. We're going to talk about in depth their areas, the triads for specific areas, maybe some cool characters that existed and some great stories. We'll dig in a little deeper next week. You guys think that's a good idea? Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Cool.
And it'll be so cool. I'm not really sure which guest will come, but it's so cool because depending on who will come, there will be different topics.
Thank you, DM. Thank you
There's
so
so much
much
with Living Greyhawk campaign. Yeah,
so we want to get them all involved there, because there was a post that went up and everyone was like, "Oh my God, if I had known, I would have done it." So I am going to get, yes, I'm still working on it, and it's been a busy real life work week too, but I will get to that. So that's next week. We're going to have a Greyhawk legend or the week after, and this is already set time wise, and this is because this gentleman is now putting out posts on 5e Greyhawk material. So in 2 weeks, Grognard's Greyhawk in 5e. Okay. So that'll be on February 19th. So we will have the great, oh my God, Joe Block on. Jeez, my brain just shut off. We'll be on to discuss what he's doing with 5e. Yes, with 5e Greyhawk. He did a great Circle of 8 reference, and he just put out another reference today, factions reference.
Yep.
Oh,
and
didn't see
we're going to
that.
have both of it. We'll have him on to discuss things, whatever he's not, he'll talk to us about stuff that's not getting published for monetary purposes. He's making generic, and some other things. Maybe we talk about some of the things that he's done in the past and just dig into.
I almost brought Joe up today because he has that Dragon Magazine article on the Pomage, but I didn't bring it up earlier.
Okay. All right. Well, we could bring that up in a couple weeks and talk to him about that
Yep.
and some other things. So we're set pretty well. Once we get to a point, let's see, that'll be the 19th, the 26th. We may have another show in Legends and Lore, but the week after that, I'm in Florida from Wednesday to Sunday. First week in March, and then I'll be out, and then Gary. So we'll only have 2 shows in March because of GaryCon coming in the 4th week. But we'll keep this cranking with entertaining things. Alrighty, so that's what's going on, everyone. Thank you so very much. Please, if you can, and you're not a regular on Gabbin, Sunday night's a great night to come on and just check out the talent of all these streamers. They're all great people, and they're all spending their time. I mean, look at Carlos. Carlos, Tim, and Jason are 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
they volunteered to do that, so we make it a 24-hour stream.
Carlos is a night owl.
That's not early for him. That's kind of late. That's when he's normally up.
Yeah,
he's up late. So yeah, he will go to bed afterwards. So
yeah. So thank you for another great show. I mean, this was awesome. Jason, thank you so very much for coming on. I gave you some shout outs. I gave everyone shout outs for I love just as long as I press the right button, it goes out pretty easily now.
Yep.
Thank you, David Leonard, for coming on and spending as much time as you could on.
Yeah.
And like I said, tomorrow night, if you really are a Shieldlander person, this is going to be some really multiple factions butting heads tomorrow night, which is cool because I like to stir it up with. I don't like just I like good versus evil versus not so good versus not so. You know what I mean? I like to throw in those different factions in there. So, all right, I'm gonna end this with showing our mega stream ad that Frank from Nightheart Gaming put together, and then we'll go to our exit screen. And I hope you guys all have a great night. See you tomorrow night. See you Sunday night. If I hit the right button here. I did.
Oh boy. I almost broke out my old Elven Kingdoms map.
Oh, yeah, there you have it. That is so cool. Yes.
I drew this on
Maps are great.
That is awesome. That is such a cool map. Can you bring it to GaryCon? I want to see it in.
I'll bring it to GaryCon.
Oh, awesome.
Nice.
Thank you. I want to see it.
Wiley, this is our shtick. We do this. We talk over things.
Yeah.
I'm glad you got your minis, Wiley, and congratulations, man. Yeah, it's the Lorgazumba channel shtick to talk over things to do. So okay, go. Yeah, shit. Where do you see this figure that Mike Disney did on Sunday night, everyone? Unbelievable.
You've got to get a link for Mike Disney.
I'm sorry, Jason. The music going high. I couldn't hear you there.
No, I was saying you need to get a link for Mike Disney.
One second. The next one's a little more calm there. We'll be able to hear you over this. February 15th. Gonna be a long day, but it's worth it. Part 3, perspectives. And I spelled perspectives wrong. I put perceptics.
Might work too. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jason. What were you saying?
Oh, I was saying you need a link to Mike Disney's Twitch channel.
I have that. We'll put that up real quick. I was gonna, let me just go Crafter shoutouts, Mike Disney. There you go. Both his Instagram and his Twitch.
Gary just teased something he's working on.
Tales of the Death Knights by Gary Lane, 13.
So anyone who sticks around, this is should be pretty good.
Yeah, I'm really stoked for that one.
Is this about Kargath?
It sounds like it's about all of them.
Yeah, it says life of one of the original Death Knights of Earth. I was wondering if it was St. Kargath from the original article all the way back all those years ago.
13 and 1.
He's in the Saints article. What's that?
It's 13 and 1.
Okay, 13 and
Yeah.
1. Okay. Kargath is the final tale. Nice.
Oh,
Beautiful.
man.
Gary,
Gary's been sitting on this stuff a long time.
I would eat that up.
Me too. Yep.
Awesome, man. Thank you for that share.
Yeah. I'm actually gonna copy that and
Everyone have a great night. See you tomorrow.